Welcome to Cosmic Comic Clips. We're diving into Aliens vs. Avengers #1 today. And it's a comic that pits Earth's mightiest heroes against, well, a xenomorph invasion.
Yeah, a terrifying fight for survival.
You'll see how it blends sci-fi horror with the superhero genre. Get ready for some twists and turns and a bleak future for some of your favorite faces.
It's a really fascinating premise. It takes place in this desolate future where the Earth is overrun by xenomorphs. These are like highly aggressive, parasitic extraterrestrial creatures, and they reproduce by implanting embryos inside living hosts.
Okay, so we need to be clear here. We're not talking about like the xenomorphs you might see at a haunted house. These creatures they're biomechanical nightmares, sleek, deadly, and they're depicted in all their grotesque glory. So anyway, Earth is overrun by them. Only a single human city remains. It's surrounded by these towering walls. It's humanity's last stand.
Wow.
There's even a hint that this final stronghold might be Chicago. It adds a layer of personal connection to those familiar with the city.
I see. And what's interesting is we're not dealing with like the bright and shiny Avengers that you might be used to. This is a team worn down, scarred, and psychologically drained by years of constant battle.
Yeah. They're definitely not in top form. You can just feel their exhaustion.
Right.
They're older, wearied by fighting, and haunted by past losses.
The artist, Esad Ribić, does a fantastic job conveying this through his incredibly detailed art style. I mean, you really feel the grit and despair.
He really brings the horror to life. He captures not just the xenomorph's terrifying forms, but also the sheer scale of the destruction. Desolate landscapes, the ruined cities. It all just contributes to the atmosphere of dread.
Yeah, it really does. You know, the desolate landscape, it reminds me of Cormac McCarthy's The Road, where the characters are traversing this barren wasteland. I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't.
Yeah, Ribić uses a lot of shadow and stark lines.
Yeah.
And his work just creates this bleak visual tone that perfectly complements the story. And speaking of bleak, we have to talk about T'Challa. So as ruler of Impuza, a sprawling galactic Wakandan empire, he's received a distress call from Earth and arrives with his son to try and contain the xenomorph outbreak.
It's tragic. He's too late. T'Challa, now the Black Panther, finds his home planet already ravaged by the xenomorphs. To make matters worse, he's fighting alongside his son.
Oh, wow.
It adds another layer of depth to the conflict. You can feel his despair, knowing that he couldn't protect his homeworld. This storyline really highlights themes of legacy and loss.
It also reinforces the sense of impending doom that hangs over the entire comic. I mean, we're talking about T'Challa the Black Panther, a hero known for his strength and intelligence, yet even he seems powerless against this threat.
And to really hammer home the point, we then see Valeria Richards, one of the most brilliant minds in the Marvel Universe, attempting to outsmart the xenomorphs. She tries to develop a virus to wipe them out. But her plan backfires with gruesome results.
This showcases the unpredictable nature of the xenomorphs. Even the smartest minds can't easily defeat them.
Which brings us to Miles Morales. He's trying to save Valeria from the xenomorphs.
Yeah.
In a desperate attempt to protect himself, he ends up getting attacked by a facehugger. But here's the twist. Miles has the Venom symbiote. And as you might imagine, things take an unexpected turn.
Oh, the Venom symbiote, this sentient alien costume that grants him enhanced abilities, actually fuses with the xenomorph. This result is a terrifying hybrid creature, something entirely new and unpredictable. It's a major game changer.
It really is. It makes you wonder, what will this new being be capable of? How will this affect the fight against the xenomorphs? It's a complete departure from any previous encounter with the xenomorphs.
Yeah.
And it really throws a wrench into the know your enemy strategy.
What's really unsettling is that the xenomorphs were already a formidable threat. Now, with the added element of the Venom symbiote, the stakes have just been raised exponentially.
Yeah. We're left with more questions than answers at this point. And that's exactly what a good comic should do. Leave you wanting more.
Well,
but before we delve deeper into those questions, we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us.
It really does throw a wrench in that whole, like, know your enemy strategy. It's not just about fighting xenomorphs anymore. This is something entirely new, potentially even more dangerous.
Exactly. I mean, it raises so many questions. What are the capabilities of this new creature? What are its weaknesses?
Yeah.
Can it be controlled?
Yeah.
Or will it become an even greater threat? And it's not just about this one hybrid. We've seen hints that Earth isn't the only place hit by the xenomorph outbreak. What if hybrids start popping up across the cosmos? What does that mean for the entire universe.
Yeah, it's a terrifying thought, especially considering how Jonathan Hickman, the writer, often explores these grand universe-altering concepts. In his work, he's known for weaving these really complex narratives that span multiple worlds and timelines.
And this isn't just a mindless action fest. There's this layer of almost Shakespearean tragedy woven through the story. We see these weary heroes, these once mighty Avengers, facing a losing battle, burdened by the weight of responsibility, and forced to make these impossible choices.
You're absolutely right. It's not just about the spectacle of aliens versus superheroes. It's about the human cost, the emotional toll, and just the agonizing knowledge that sometimes even the strongest can't save everyone.
And speaking of Shakespearean tragedy, remember that scene where T'Challa and his son are fighting side by side?
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. You can see the weight of the world on T'Challa's shoulders, knowing that his legacy, his responsibility to his people, rests on the outcome of this battle. The way Hickman writes their dialogue, it's poignant, filled with a sense of duty and impending loss. It really makes you feel the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of inevitability, almost like watching a Greek tragedy unfold, Yeah. You know these characters are going to suffer, and there's a good chance many of them won't survive.
Okay, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the pacing of this first issue. It's not your typical fast-paced, action-packed superhero story. It's much more deliberate, almost slow-burning, but in a way that ratchets up the tension with every panel.
I agree. It's like Hickman is intentionally letting the dread seep in, giving us time to absorb the gravity of the situation. And it's not just the writing. Esad Ribić's art style plays a huge role in setting that tone.
His style reminds me of the artwork in Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. That same grittiness, that same emphasis on shadows and stark lines. It's a masterclass. Visual storytelling. Every panel just feels heavy with consequence, the way he uses shadows. The stark landscapes, the expressions on the characters' faces. It all adds to the atmosphere of impending doom.
It's interesting to think about how this comic fits into the larger Alien franchise. We've seen the Xenomorphs go up against Space Marines, convicts, even Predators.
Right, and even in those stories, they were incredible tough opponents. But never have they faced a threat, quite like the Avengers. I mean, we're talking about a team with godlike powers, advanced technology, centuries of combined combat experience. Yet they're completely overwhelmed by this invasion. Honestly, it makes the Xenomorphs seem even more terrifying.
It makes you wonder if there is any way to beat them, at least not permanently. This isn't just about brute force. The Xenomorphs are adaptable, ruthless, and possess a complete disregard for life as we know it. It's almost like fighting a force of nature.
Exactly. But then we have the hybrid, this fusion of alien power and something, potentially heroic, if you consider Venom's history. The symbiote has bonded with heroes before. It can be a force for good. But can it control the Xenomorph, or will it be consumed by its primal instincts?
This raises some fascinating moral questions. What happens when the lines between hero and monster become blurred? What sacrifices will the Avengers have to make to survive? And who gets to decide which sacrifices are acceptable?
It's a moral gray area. And those are the kinds of questions that make this comic so compelling. It's not just about cool fight scenes and explosions, although there are plenty of those. It's about the human cost, moral dilemmas, and the very nature of hope in the face of overwhelming darkness.
And it's a testament to Hickman's skill as a writer, that he can take these larger-than-life characters, these iconic superheroes, and put them in a situation where they are truly vulnerable.
Right. He strips them of their usual confidence and swagger, forcing them to confront their own mortality in a way we haven't really seen before.
Their humanity is on full display. We see their fear, their grief, their desperation.
That's a reminder that even the mightiest heroes are still at their core human. But even in the face of unimaginable horrors, there are still moments of courage, compassion, and even humor.
Right. Like that scene where a couple of survivors are huddled around a makeshift fire, sharing stories, and we're trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. It's a small moment, but it's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's still something worth fighting for. They really do resonate, those small moments of humanity. They remind us that even when facing extinction, there's still that spark of hope, that determination to hold on to what makes us human.
Exactly. It's not just about aliens and superheroes. It's about what it means to be human in the face of unimaginable horror.
It's about our resilience, our capacity for compassion, and our refusal to give up hope, even when all seems lost.
This comic doesn't shy away from the ugliness and despair of the situation, but it's those flickers of hope, those acts of kindness that really stick with you.
Yeah, they provide a stark contrast to the cold, calculating nature of the Xenomorph.
And speaking of contrast, the artwork, with its dark, gritty realism, further emphasizes this juxtaposition.
Ribić's attention to detail is incredible. From the intricate designs of the Xenomorphs to the subtle expressions of the characters, every element contributes to the overall impact of the story.
Imagine, you're right there in the thick of it. The stench of fear and desperation hanging in the air, the ground trembling beneath your feet as these biomechanical horrors swarm the city.
It's a visceral experience. You can almost feel the cold, slimy skin of a Xenomorph as it lunges from the shadows.
It really is. This brings us back to the core of what makes this comic so compelling. It forces us to confront our own fears, our own vulnerabilities, and ultimately, our own capacity for resilience.
It's a story that asks some difficult questions. What would you do in the face of such overwhelming odds? What sacrifices would you be willing to make?
Those are the questions that linger long after you finish reading this issue. And that, I think, is the mark of a truly great comic book.
It's not just about entertainment. It's about making us think, making us feel, and making us question our own place in the universe.
So where do we go from here? Aliens versus Avengers, #1. It's thrown us into a bleak and terrifying future. The heroes are battered, the stakes are impossibly high, and the arrival of Xenomorph Hybrid.
It's thrown everything into chaos.
It's a game changer. And as we move forward in this miniseries, one thing is certain. It's going to be a wild, unpredictable, and undoubtedly thought-provoking journey. This first issue has left us with more questions than answers. And that's exactly what we want. We can't wait to see how Jonathan Hickman and Esad Ribić continue this story.
We're hooked, and we have a feeling you are too.
So what does it all mean? Well, it means we're in for one hell of a ride. And on that note, we're going to leave you
with a final provocative thought. If you were in the Avengers' place, facing this kind of threat, what would you do? How far would you go to survive?
It's a question worth pondering. Because sometimes the toughest battles aren't fought on the battlefield, but within ourselves.
And that wraps up our deep dive into Aliens versus Avengers #1. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Cosmic Comic Clips for more deep dives into the world of comics. We'll see you next time.